Epic explainer where we are going to decode the absolute biggest democratic festival on the planet. Forget the World Cup, forget Diwali, literally nothing matches the pure scale, the madness and the magic of the great Indian election. Whether you're a first-time voter who just got that shiny new voter ID or just someone who looks at this massive country and wonders, भाई ये सब चलता कैसे है without falling apart, आज हम ये पूरा system एकदम clearly समझने वाले हैं. So, बिना किसी delay के, let's jump right in. Here's our quick syllabus for today's masterclass. We'll kick things off with class election se desh tak, taking it from a schoolroom to the entire nation. Then we'll meet the ultimate boss, the Election Commission of India. Uske baad, we'll carefully break down the Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. Then it's voting tech or rules. And finally, we'll wrap up with Aapke Sawal, Mere Jawab, where I'll be answering your top questions. Alright, part 1. Class election se desh tak. We all remember our school days, right? जब class monitor choose करना होता था. Remember how ridiculously competitive things used to get? Take Suryodaya School for instance. Just a tiny class of 33 students voting for their class representative. You had candidates making all those classic fake promises about extra games periods. Their teacher acted as the strict election officer, setting up a secret ballot box in the corner. Nobody knew who voted for whom. It was completely fair, totally transparent, and everyone had an equal voice. Nobody could peek, nobody could cheat. Now take this very simple, elegant concept of choosing a leader and multiply it by, well, a lot. Multiply it by 980 million. Yes, that is the jaw-dropping number of eligible voters India had in the 2024 elections. From a tiny classroom of 33 kids to nearly 1 billion people. Just wrap your head around that scale for a second. If all these voters literally formed a single line, they would circle the entire globe multiple times. This isn't just an election, it is a mind-boggling logistical miracle. The journey from 1947 to today is just wild. Back when we got independence, our literacy rate was just around 14%. Critics globally laughed and said a poor, uneducated country simply couldn't handle democracy. But our constitution makers said, no way, everyone gets to vote, regardless of education or wealth. Fast forward to today, we organize elections across 543 parliamentary constituencies using over 1 million polling stations. 1 million. Fun fact for you, the first ever voter in India's general elections was a school teacher named Shyam Sarnegi back in 1951. He literally kept voting in every single election until he was over 100 years old. What a legend. Moving on to part 2, the Election Commission of India. एक इतने बड़े देश में इलेक्शन करवाना सच में बच्चों का खेल नहीं है, right? You need a seriously strict referee. Enter the ECI. Established in 1950, this is an independent constitutional body. Think of them as the supreme event organizers of the country. उनका सबसे पहला बड़ा test was conducting the very first general elections in 1951 and 52. Imagine pulling that off without the internet, without proper roads, and with millions of people voting for the absolute first time. They set a rock-solid foundation for the democracy we see today. Now, their responsibilities are absolutely massive, and we really need to understand this carefully. Everyone knows they handle the big prime minister elections, but it goes way deeper. The ECI directly conducts the elections for the Lok Sabha and all the state legislative assemblies. But wait, that's not all. They are also fully in charge of the complex, indirect elections of the Rajya Sabha. And yes, they even meticulously handle the election of the vice president and the election of the president of India. They register the parties, set the dates, and run the whole show. And you simply cannot talk about the ECI without bowing down to this absolute legend, T.N. Sheshan. He became the chief election commissioner in 1990, and oh boy, he made politicians sweat like they were in a surprise math test. He cleaned up the system, completely eliminated the illegal practice of proxy voting where people used to vote in someone else's name, and clamped down on election spending. T.N. Sheshan basically showed the whole country the true biting power of the ECI. Alright, part 3, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Since the ECI handles both, let's carefully clear up the confusion between these two houses of parliament. बहुत लोगों को इसमें हमेशा डाउट होता है. Let's break it down side by side. The Lok Sabha is the lower house with 543 seats. Here, the election is completely direct. आप और मैं, the common public, we go and vote directly for our local MP using a straightforward first past the post system. Basically, जिसकी सबसे ज़्यादा votes वो जीत गया. Simple. But the Rajya Sabha has 245 seats and uses indirect elections. We don't vote for them. Instead, the MLAs that we already elected to our state assemblies, they vote on our behalf. Let's look closer at those 245 Rajya Sabha seats. Out of these, 233 are elected by those state MLAs. The remaining 12 are actually VIPs, like artists, scientists, or sports stars, who are directly nominated by the President of India. Or it got interesting about these seats are allocated based on a state's population. So a heavily populated state like Uttar Pradesh gets way more seats in the Rajya Sabha compared to a smaller state like Goa. It keeps the representation proportional and fair. Now, how do those MLAs actually vote for the Rajya Sabha? They use a notoriously complex system called the single transferable vote. Let me simplify it. Instead of just picking one person, the MLAs rank the candidates. Think of it like ranking your favorite street food. Pani Puri is your number 1, samosa is number 2, and vada pav is number 3. If your top choice doesn't have enough support to win, your vote doesn't get wasted. It magically transfers to your second choice. Also, the Rajya Sabha is a permanent house. It never fully dissolves. 1/3 of its members retire every 2 years, so it's this continuous, rotating body of experienced leaders. Let's jump to Part 4. Voting Tekok rules. The big election day is finally here. What exactly happens inside that polling booth, and how do we stop the cheating? Going to vote is like going through a highly organized, well-oiled machine. There are 4 precise steps. First, the officer verifies your ID. Second, they put that famous indelible ink on your finger. Yes, the exact same ink we all proudly flaunt in our post-voting selfies. Third, they double-check your chit and your newly inked finger. And fourth, you finally walk over to cast your vote on the EVM. Ekdom simple, super streamlined, and totally secure. Inside that little voting compartment, the real magic happens. You press the blue button on the electronic voting machine and you hear that loud beep. But don't just walk away. Look at the machine right next to it, the VVPAT. The moment you press the button, it instantly prints a small paper slip showing exactly who you voted for. This slip stays visible behind a glass window for about 7 seconds before dropping into a sealed box. It is a physical hard copy backup, allowing you to 100% verify your electronic vote. No hacking fears here. Of course, technology alone isn't enough. We need incredibly strict rules. Enter the Model Code of Conduct, or MCC. When elections are announced, and this kicks in, politicians suddenly have to behave like ideal students. No distributing freebies or bundles of 500 rupee notes, no abusive language, no using VIP government cars with sirens for campaigning. It originated in Kerala back in 1960 and completely levels the playing field for everyone, making sure it's a fair fight. And now for Part 5. Aapke sawal, meri jawab. This is my absolute favorite part of the explainer. I've gathered some of the most highly requested questions from you guys, and I will answer them right now. Let's do this. First up, what happens if I just don't like any of the candidates? Great question. अगर आपको लगता है कि सारे candidates बेकार हैं, you can press Nota, none of the above. It's usually the last button on the EVM. Now, pressing Nota won't magically cancel the election or change the mathematical winner, but it sends a massive documented message to political parties that the public is unhappy and demands much better choices. Next question. The ECI handles the big national and state elections, but who handles local Gram Panchayat and city municipal elections? This is a very common point of confusion. The national ECI doesn't actually micromanage your local ward elections. We have completely separate bodies for that called the State Election Commissions. They step in to handle all the grassroots level voting. Question 3. How do the elderly or disabled vote if they physically cannot reach the polling booth? The ECI is incredibly empathetic here. They already provide Braille voter cards and wheelchair ramps. But the coolest part? In 2024, for the very first time, citizens over 85 and people with severe disabilities were given the option of home voting and postal voting. Election officials literally trekked up mountains and crossed rivers just to reach people's living rooms. No voter left behind. Let's wrap up with a really crucial thought. In 2024, despite all these incredible efforts, about 34% of eligible voters did not exercise their right to vote. 34%! That means roughly 330 million people stayed home. That's literally more than the entire population of the USA just deciding not to vote. Why? Is it apathy? Laziness? Remember, when we don't vote, we are literally handing over the remote control of our lives to someone else. Our Constitution makers fought tooth and nail for this right. So next time this massive festival of democracy comes around, will you just sit at home and complain, or will you actually step up and participate? Think about it. Thank you so much for joining this explainer, and I'll catch you